Many people are speaking about a new war that started in between Russia and obviously Ukraine. But the point is, nowadays the mass media is giving people the impression that they're always giving them the exact piece of news and they're always being correctly informed about things. It seemed that mass media gave the impression to people that every one of them is now an expert in virusology and vaccinology and medicine in general, and it kind of feels that medics are kind of useless now that everyone by the corner of the street and everyone significant or not seems to know everything in this sick society that gives you all the possible information, but you never know whether it is true. Many people speak of this war, and some people speak highly. They want the Russians to win. Other people want the Ukrainians or the United Forces to win. And there's a lot of people who say, "Stop the war, stop the war." And I've seen it as an interesting fact. Even in Elder Scrolls Online, on a certain server, people actually gathered together, even if they were from opposing factions, and they actually, formed lines and they walked together in a sense of protest. But you see, silent protests in video games aren't going to be taken into account. First of all, it's a video game. It's not reality. You can do anything that you want in a video game. It's not gonna change anything. Most likely except your emotional and psychological state, most surely. I've seen other such movements, like the LGBT movement, for example, in Guild Wars 2, which is also called the Pride Day, or I'm not sure, it is a fixed day in which people who support that movement, they march across the maps together in big numbers. And the point is, well, yes, but you see, it is a representation in a video game. It's just a representation for a small community. Even if the news makes it to the, let's say, front pages of a few mass media platforms, let's say, it's still irrelevant because only what you do in this real world truly matters. And when it comes to control and decisions, and where there's a lot of money, your protest in a video game is simply irrelevant. In most cases, even protests in real life are simply disregarded, or worse than that, they are demonized by, the so-called system. Everyone is speaking about the war, and many people are speaking about that. Many people feel they're experts and they know everything about the situation and Putin and the such and Biden. But you see, there are experts, like true military experts, who say the amount of disinformation from both sides is so great, not even them know what they can say. So why would anyone else say, hey, I know everything about this war? But the problem is, everyone is speaking about this war, but people are forgetting one thing. The way that we think is the biggest problem, because we are brought up in a sick society which is all about comparison. Comparison is the greatest thief of joy, as people say. And when you are born in comparison, war is always one step further. Because in comparison, you will always feel a bit victimizing because you will always have the impression the other one is, more favored, the other one is more beautiful, the other one is luckier than you, especially when it comes to video games. The other one has a lot more luck than you, the other one has the better looks or whatever. Then you also have a big problem, right? When it comes to comparison, you will start comparing even your country, even your identity, and all the such. These are all nothing else but external aspects of one's life. All these distractions, they are distractions after all, and the purpose of a distraction is to keep you out of your personal power. Because when you focus only on external aspects, you'll always feel powerless because your power is not outside. Your power is only outside when you want to give it to others. And when you freely give your power to others, well then, don't wonder why you are feeling so powerless. Because you're taught from youth that you're useless. Whatever you want to do is not going to be for you. So this one pushes you into, a sense of submission because it teaches you one thing, which is a pillar of manipulation. And well, this aspect is called learned hopelessness. When you learn hopelessness, you know that literally anything that you would want to do is, useless, and you start suffering. In order to prevent suffering, you'll want to distract yourself, and the sick society is always ready to simply distract you with all sorts of things. Because when you don't have anything to do because you think you're useless, you'll either get bored or you'll simply create much more pain. Both of these lead to overthinking. And when you overthink, you're gonna think far more about certain things which don't even serve you. And when you add the idea of feeling useless, you'll end up victimizing. And when you end up victimizing, you're one step away from a war. It may not be an armed war, but you'll end up feeling that everything else is better than you. So, when someone says, my country is better than you, that's already a little declaration of war. When someone says, my God is better than you, that's already another small declaration of war. Now, obviously, of war doesn't have to be, an armed war or a nuclear war or any physical war. Because you see, the problem with wars exists because we all live in cancer. See, we all live in internal struggles. We all live in internal warfares with us and whatever we have accumulated. Because your being longs for certain things, you feel like doing certain things, but obviously you have accumulated thousands of thoughts from other people who would gladly do literally anything to pull you down. You want to do some project of yours, you want to do something unique, different than others, and well, your parents, friends, or whomever you trust in life, most likely, some of them at least, will desperately try to pull you down, in many cases using quite discreet methods so that you don't realize that. It will always happen. They are not called crab people for nothing. So you see, the point about this is, we are constantly speaking about wars and the such, but we are not taking into account the internal struggles that people have. Because once people learn how to be calmer and no longer create karma and suffering, right, through their mental struggles, emotional struggles, because you see, people are taught stupidly that their emotions are the enemy or their thoughts are the enemy. You don't have any control over those. They will come sooner or later. It's just that one has to let them flow. Any thought that comes to your mind most likely isn't yours anyways, so it's just the recycling of ideas that you have accumulated in time, and simply you have given them up. You thought they were irrelevant or you simply repressed them, but they seek to simply liberate themselves, just like life seeks to liberate itself from the karmic cycles of life and death. So they will come back again and again and incorporate any number of physical bodies is needed to simply break the karmic cycle of life and death. Thoughts do the same thing. They'll pop back into your mind every time they can, so that they liberate themselves. In order to liberate yourself from a thought, you have to constantly, you have to do it for several times. You have to let that thought flow. See, you'll learn one thing, that the more you do something, the better you become at it, right? You play a video game several times and then you become much better, your reflexes also improve. You do a bike trick, most likely it's not going to work in the first few tries, you're going to do it several times and guess what, it's going to become better and better, right? And it's going to become easier and easier for you to achieve it. Now the same thing goes with your emotions and your feelings. If you think about yourself constantly that you're bad and you self-sabotage yourself several times, well, guess what? In time you'll become even better, right? When you self-sabotage, you're gonna have frustrations because you could have done something and you chose not to. Frustrations obviously lead to pain, and pain requires distraction so that you simply don't feel the pain, right? And a sick society like the one we live in is very refined in distractions. There are so many things that one can do, but you're just focusing on external sources. When you're doing that, you're feeling disempowered. When you're feeling disempowered, well, you're feeling useless because you have no power. And again, the cycle repeats. That's why I've always been saying, see, the point about life is, life has to be touched, life has to be lived. Distractions are like death, because in distraction, one's awareness simply vanishes. If one's awareness vanishes, well, that being is like dead in a way, because they can't perceive anything. If you can't perceive anything, you don't touch life, because it's like you're not living it, something else lives it for you. See, there is a quote that says, if you don't live your life, someone else will. And it's always someone else that lives most people's lives, because we have parents whom we were grown by and we learned a lot of impulses from them. We also have our own impulses, and we also learn all sorts of bad habits from other people. When one allows those bad habits to take control of them, well, the point is you're letting someone else simply live your life, right? And then you're becoming frustrated by this, and you start declaring war on all the little parts within you. In order to become whole, right? That's how a certain quote starts. In order to reach enlightenment, right, one needs to become whole. But in order to become whole, you need to put all the puzzle pieces within you together, right? Not live in this illusion that your emotions are the enemy, because that means fracturing of yourself, and that means putting the pieces apart. So the point in life is you have to make peace with literally each and every bit that you don't like. Because honestly, when you came in this world, you didn't know shit. You didn't know the language or languages you're speaking. You didn't have thoughts about anything, and you also didn't have attachments towards other things. You just saw people around you doing certain things, and you simply replicated their patterns, right, through mirroring, right? Neuron mirroring or mirror. Yes, it's mirror neurons, and the process is called mirroring. Yes, through which you see someone do certain things, and there are specialized neurons within you which tell you how to replicate that specific action. And you do that to learn new things, and you also do that to adapt socially, because when you want to approach someone, it is always a good strategy to simply replicate their body position. But there's also knowledge about this that one needs to know. That way, when you replicate someone's body position for the first time, you show them that you don't want any, you don't have any dark intents, let's say so. So to move even further, the point about wars is, first of all, learn what your internal struggles are. Why are you struggling because of those? And most likely you will realize that, well, sooner or later you will realize that most of those struggles are things that happened in the past, and you're attached to an outcome, and you're using that as a reason to simply stab yourself again and again emotionally. Something that happened you can't change. It happened and that's it. Something that didn't happen yet and is in the future, well, why need to suffer for something that didn't yet happen? So the point is, when it comes to the past, many people suffer from things that happened. They just happened and that's it. You can't change that, because obviously you can't change the past, but the only thing you can change is your opinion about the past. Because when you create opinions, they're not necessarily the best approach. They're not necessarily the wisest thing that you can do. So stop thinking about external wars. Obviously, they can influence you, so I'm not saying you should be ignorant to the wars. There will always be victims, there will always be collateral damage, because, well, that's the nature of a war, and it's been so even in the medieval times when you had, primitive siege weapons. Now, you can decimate an entire city with the pressing of a wrong button, or, well, an intended button, but, that's how things are. But don't forget that the mass media have the power to simply create things and realities for you, because they are, in a way, programmed to lie to you. After all, media, the word, comes from the Greek Medea, which was the name of the goddess of deceit. So the truth is in our faces. One has to face it, right? One has to see it. But not just see it, realize it. All the struggles come from comparison. When comparison is no longer a problem, well, that's when things will start changing. Because comparison leads to racism. And racism doesn't have anything to do with race, human race as we call it. Why on earth do we even call ourselves a human race? I mean, whom are we actually racing against? See, war always has to do something with race, but not human race. The idea of race in the sense of racing, right? Because when you're at war with someone, you're always racing against them. You're trying to prove yourself that you're wiser, better, or whatever, something like that. You want to prove yourself that, you want to prove them that you are the better one, right? The big boss, or whatever you want to call it. So that's again comparison. Comparison stems from ignorance, because ignorance means always looking outside. You're ignoring that which is inside. You're ignoring the pearl that you are, right? The jewel that you are. Because you always think there is something out there which is much better. Don't dive into the aspects of the mind. That is always the impulse of the mind, and that is why monks and gurus and the such always seek to transcend the mind, because the mind cannot be saturated. It always longs for something else. You achieve something, okay, it wants the next thing. You achieve your greatest journey in life, well, your mind is already thinking about the next one. You reach a great position, you're already thinking about the next, right? It always goes again and again and again. There's no stopping. That's how the mind works. If one doesn't know how their mind works, well, there is a quote in war also. You'll also be in war with your mind if you don't know how it functions, and you can't beat your mind because it was never meant to be beaten by you in the first place. The mind has a big power. Whatever it shows you, it can show it to you in such a way that you'll believe it is true. And at the same time, he who doesn't know himself in times of war, well, that's a problem. Because if you know yourself and your enemy, if you know these two variables very well, you will not fear the outcome of many battles. If you know yourself but not the enemy, well, you'll have some defeats, right? You'll have some defeats and you'll have some wins. But if you know neither yourself and the enemy, well, don't be surprised if you'll constantly be a loser, right? So all this being said, hopefully this video was introspective enough. You are appreciated, take care, and, well, stay awesome. Enjoy life as much as one can. And, well, all this being said, take care, you are appreciated, stay awesome. Ferenc Board signing out.